good evening. Can I get somebody to kill these front lights here? Because this is going to be kind of a sort of a slide intensive presentation, I guess you could say. And those lights, I think, sometimes get in the way. If you have your Bibles and would like to be turning, I think it's that last one over there, Jim. All of that right there, boom. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Job chapter 40 and 41. We have two creatures mentioned there that a lot of people talk about. Where did we come from? Dinosaurs, things of this nature. You have what is referred to as the behemoth. The behemoth is referred to in Job chapter 40 in verse 15. Now, if you remember, the Lord, Job this whole time, he's been wanting to talk to God. Well, he's going to get the opportunity now. And God says, okay, here I am. You want to talk to me? Then talk to me. And of course, very quickly, he has Job pretty much, just says, God, I should not have questioned you. I should not have questioned your judgment. I realized that was not in my forte. But then God's going to start talking about some things, like where were you when I created the earth? And he's going to mention these two creatures. One is the behemoth in verse 15, which I made with thee. Notice, I madeth with thee. He eateth grass as an ox, but lo, his strength is in his loins, the force of his muscles, of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His thighs is what the American Standard Version, I believe, in a better translation there. Notice verse 23, behold, he drinketh up a river and hasteth not. In verse 41, talk about the Leviathan and how that you can't tame this animal. You can't even catch it. It's just an immense animal. And you go down and you read through all that. The whole chapter is basically dealing with that. It talks about his scales are his pride in verse 15. Shut up together as with a close seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. And you see out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. And so if you read down through that description, it's an amazing creature that's being discussed. And many creation scientists, many creationists like myself, believe that God is talking about animals that are no longer around. They're called, they're extinct. And that's one of the reasons I want to talk to you tonight about this lesson. And because when I was younger, I just had to listen to people talk about evolution. I had to listen to biology teachers in high school. I knew what they were saying did not jive with what my Sunday school teacher was saying, but I had no ammunition, I had no recourse but to simply say, well, I just have to trust God and believe God, and what they're saying can't be right if what God's saying. But then they do it with such impact, it puts a young person in a real dilemma. And when I did find out about Apologetics Press, I was already starting to preach. And I did not know that information was out there. I did not know the information had been out there. Just so happens they came out with a book a few years ago called The Dinosaur Delusion, and it's got a new cover now. It's a really beautiful book. This is by Eric Lyons and Kyle Budd, a couple of young men that work at Apologetics Press. I highly recommend that if you have a young person that likes to read, it's got plenty of pictures. For those that don't, it's kind of like a comic book. You can look at it too. But it deals with so many things. And one of the things it talks about, and something that I think we need to be very aware of, is that evolutionists use dinosaurs the way Disney uses Mickey Mouse, and the way that McDonald's uses the Happy Meal. They know what triggers kids. They know what gets people's attention. And the dinosaurs basically are poster children for the evolutionist campaign to take over the young folks' minds. And it's a very nice book. They talk about that in chapter 1. Chapters 2 and 3, they talk about historic evidence for the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs, which you believe in creationism, that God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. That means God created the dinosaurs then. It won't stand like years ago, and I can remember people talking like this, that there were no such things as dinosaurs. I'm 52 now. I don't know if some of you guys a little younger than me may not have heard that, but at one time I heard people say that it was just a big hoax, that there was no such thing as dinosaurs. That's how Christians would deal with that a lot of times. And then kids go to school, and they see all these pictures. They go to Washington, D.C., they go to the Smithsonian, and they see all these, bones, fossils and things, and they're like, well, something's there. That has to be something. Go to the Bray tar pits in California. That you can see that things are being dug up. You're saying, man, this is not right. There's something here. And so that's certainly not the way to do it. A lot of folks would just simply didn't know, and they were just giving out bad information. And so they go and they talk about the historical evidence, the physical evidence, then the biblical evidence, and then talk about some things at the end that, and we by no means will do an exhaustive treatment of this book, but it's very rare nowadays where I sit down and read a book from cover to cover in a week, and I did that in a little less than a week with this book. It's very informative. And the thing that I like about it, evolutionists don't have to deal with what you and I have to deal with. They're not even worried about truth. And I mean that with all they have for years put pictures in textbooks that have been proven false, and they will with not even, no conscience, don't blush at all, go, yeah, that's right, but man, doesn't it not teach a good does it not really bring home what we're trying to say? And they'll do that. They don't have to worry about being right, being wrong. And when they are wrong, do you think they get a retraction in the next textbook? They don't even mention it. They're not worried about that. But you and I are held to a different standard. And of course, we agree to do that. Why? Because we're Christians. We don't lie. We don't just fabricate things. We tell the truth. Well, why do I say that? As a preacher, you don't spend a lot of time, studying biology and all those type things. That's one of the reasons I'm so thankful for these guys. They do. They have advanced degrees many times in those particular fields. And so they've got the brain power behind it, if you will, to speak the same lingo as these guys who are writing the stuff that's not true. One of the reasons I appreciate Focus Press out of Nashville and Brad Harrop and all the good work that he does. And so from time to time, I buy books like this to try to stay up on what's out there. Some of the slides you're going to see tonight were from a sermon I put together 20 years ago. Some of the slides you're going to see tonight, the information didn't exist when I wrote this sermon 20 years ago. You're going to see some slides here from 1998 and some temples in Cambodia that they did not know were there. These images, well, they knew the temples were there, but they didn't realize these images were there. And you're going to see that. So they're constantly finding new things, and we're constantly finding the archaeologists, they're doing their thing. And one of the things that, kind of blew me away as we'll look at this as we go through is the absence of fossils, how few fossils there are. What do I mean by that? We're going to talk about a stegosaurus here in a little bit. Do you realize there's only 3 stegosaurus, actual complete stegosauruses, and they are missing bones in the world? Yeah, you can just about go to any museum and you'll see a stegosaurus. You'll see a fully assembled Tyrannosaurus Rex. You know what's interesting about that? Not too long ago, they had to go through the entire Natural Museum there and redo a whole bunch of the statues they'd put together with these bones. You know why? They'd put them together wrong. Why? Well, the information they had at the time, that's how they thought they went together. And the dude that was in charge of it said, in 20 years, the way we're finding things out, we'll probably have to redo it again then. So much of what we're seeing today and reading today is based on just ideas and what people think and the actual information out there. Do you realize there are more scientists that study fossils than there are fossils? Did you realize that? Dinosaur fossils, you got more people trained to study them than you do actual fossils. I didn't know that. I just assumed everywhere you went, man, them things are hanging on trees. They're everywhere. Well, they're not. As a matter of fact, they're very, very rare. And so some of the things we're going to look at tonight, I entitled this lesson, Where Did We and the Earth Come From? And of course, we know where, as Christians, where the earth came from. God tells us very quickly that He created the world. He did it in 6 days. And guess what? He created us in that time frame too. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, heaven and the earth. I've often said, and I'll say it again, Genesis 1:1, to me, if you can bring yourself to grasp that, then the rest of what you read in the Old Testament is just not going to be hard to deal with. Sun standing still, all those type of things. You're just not going to have a problem with that. And you know what the alternative is to that? Evolutionists, atheists, they look, God created heaven. Now give me a break. Don't you know that scientists have explained that it was what? A little ball of gas out there that weighed more than the Rocky Mountains, if you will. And it's so small you could hardly even see it, and it just blew up. And here we are. Isn't that great? That's how it happened. What is more far-fetched to believe? That all of this, everything that we see, is just some cosmic accident, some explosion. You and I are nothing more than dirt, lucky dirt that just happened to go up one side of the food chain. That is the best explanation that science can give us. We're going to look at some of the statistics just showing how absurd the thought of it is. And yet we're told all the time that you and I are just product of evolution. We're not products of that. We're created in the image of God. The Bible says that men are different. Now, our evolutionist friends, they don't believe that. They believe me and you were nothing more than a little mouse for centuries. What am I saying, centuries? That's not even a drop in a bucket. For millions of years, me and you were nothing more than a little mouse. You know that? We were mammals. We were rats, if you will. We hadn't even made it to primate yet. So we're just little rats, but we couldn't grow up to be big rats or bigger rats because there were dinosaurs running around that'd stomp on us and eat us and junk. So, we just didn't have the capability then to go ahead and evolve into monkeys and things of that nature. Well, the thing about that is now they found these rats that are supposedly this big, that during that same time there were beavers and things this tall that are not even supposed to be there. The numbers, the fossil record does not prove evolution. As a matter of fact, it offers far more questions that they cannot answer, and yet we're being sold this as a matter of fact. And folks, it's not as a matter of fact. You're much more than an animal. You're not a dog. You're not a cat. You are a moral person who is created in the image of God. And yet when you tell people that that's what they are, they have a tendency to act like it. And if you don't believe that, just look at our society. Look at the cultures that have followed this evolutionary idea and see where they are. See where the difference between humans. You've got people who will stand up and protest, who will go out and try to stop the block dams being built or nuclear power plants coming online because they're worried about a particular type of fish or a particular type of bird being built. And yet people are destroying their young children, preborn, unborn children, left and right. Where is the outcry for that? We just don't understand. We're created in the image of God. We're special, not animals. I'm not saying we should mistreat animals, but men are on a different level. Men have souls. Men will be somewhere from conception through eternity. Animals will not. The days of creation, Stephanie has a song they sing with the young people. One of these days I'm going to learn that. It would really help me out. And she's tried to teach that. I don't know why I can't grasp that thing, but it'd be great if we could just stop there, but we cannot. First 11 chapters of the Bible are the most attacked of all of Scripture. The first 11 chapters. And you know what Jesus quoted from more than any? How many times did he say, have you not read? He that in the beginning made them male and female. Talks about Noah and talks about how in the end time, the last day, it'll be like it was in the days of Noah. Jesus believed in those chapters, and yet they're the most attacked of all. And when you do that, when you attack and see a lot of our Christian friends, and I use that term loosely, because of the pressure of evolution, because of the pressure of academia, because of the pressure of the ivory palaces of education, fall prey to this, say, well, somehow or another we have got to jive the idea of evolution with creation. And so you have these different type theories, one of which, of course, is the middle one there, theistic evolution. And that's where people try to take the first 6 days, stick millions of years in between the days, or just come out with what's called the gap theory, in which that nothing happens for a billion years, and then God decides to start doing something with the earth, and that's not how the record reads. A lot of times, because of the material that's out there, just the absolute cannot explain away the idea of the earth being covered with water, scientists has turned and tried to say that there were localized floods, and that's why you have these big pools, these big tombs of dinosaurs. You just don't go out and find one dinosaur bone. Generally, when you're going to find these fossils, they're going to be collected. They're going to be all together. You're going to have omnivores with carnivores. And, they wouldn't have been hanging out together unless there was some kind of cataclysmic, catastrophic event. And I believe that's what the idea of the Genesis flood shows. And so these reinterpretations, they attack the Bible. They attack the formation of God, the foundation of God. And you can see that the meaning of life, when you say, well, the Bible's just a fairy tale, it's just a book, it's just people got together and wrote some things, and it's just, you attack that, and you get what we've got today. You get a society that has no more mores. They have no moral compass whatsoever. Anything goes. We can't even figure out what bathroom to use nowadays. It's that ridiculous when you leave the God of the Bible and creation. And listen, I know I've got about 70-something slides, and we're on number 10. So if we don't finish, it's okay. I'm going to stop at 15 till, according to my watch. Now, you just have to figure out, what does my watch say? But where do you fit in these millions of years? Well, you don't. The Bible's very clear that it was created, and even what gets me is when preachers buy into this. There was a guy for a long time who was a staunch creationist who taught heavily, and one of the first things, I think what kind of even inspired the Apologetics Press to take off like it did, was Bert Thompson just basically chased this fella around and taught against what he was saying, because he leaned towards this. He felt the pressure of evolution and tried to come up with the idea of theistic evolution. That's what you have theologians doing today, and it's just very unfortunate. One of the things here I have is an idea of where did we get our week? The 6 days of creation. God rested on the seventh, and this to me is a proof. Now, is it concrete? Is it absolute? Is it thus saith the Lord? But I think there's a lot of inference here. Maybe not a book, chapter, and verse. But notice, we get our day, how long it takes the earth to go around. One time, 24 hours. A month, that's on a a lunar calendar. It's how long it takes the moon to go around. What about a year? Well, a year is because that's how long it takes for us to go around the sun. But the week, Exodus 20 at verse 11 says, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea and all that in them is, and rested on the seventh day." Now, I spent over a year and a half in the Hebrew language, and one of the things that I wanted to look at was Genesis chapter 1, because I have read over and over again how that the word used there could mean not just a 24-hour day, but a period of time. That's what your day-age people want you to believe. That the Bible talks of 6 days, but it's really six, millions and millions of years, just these million-year days. Well, this is the same word that's used. There were all kinds of words in the Hebrew to have used for that. They didn't, but that's not what the Hebrew writer used. He used a 24-hour day. It says the evening and the morning were the first day. Not 100 million of them were. Notice here, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." There is a quote from Exodus showing that very thing. Our week comes from the God. But we talked about the dinosaur, and you've got a guy here who looks a lot like Bill Nye the Science Guy. I like Bill Nye. I used to love to watch his program till I saw him get into it with a couple of our folks and get into some debates and just how willing he is to bend information and just say some things that aren't proved and just say it matter-of-factly, and would say that you and I are the problem with the society today, because we're holding society back because we're trying to teach this fairy tale of some bearded fella up in the sky who created the world in 6 days. That's the kind of jargon that they would use, and that's what Bill Nye would say when Bill Nye would go and quote things to try to prove his position that just simply are false and not right and not sustainable, and you cannot prove it. But really, Christians are the problem with society today? I think we all need to take a long, hard look at that. Is it Christians that are running around shooting people? Is it Christians who are in turf wars, even in Chattanooga, so a place to sell drugs? Is it Christians who are destroying our foundation of this country? I don't think so. But see, as we've said here, Christians are not the only fishers of men. Folks know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They know what appeals to man. Here, you see photos like this. I saw those growing up, and I mean, it was just so matter-of-factly, like a guy was standing there drawing these apes. It's like, this is just in somebody's mind. Somebody's mind says, this is how it ought to look, and so they draw it. And, of course, I thought this is kind of funny. On top here, you have the evolution of man, and then on the bottom, the evolution of women, they're cleaning anyway. That's terrible, isn't it? I know. But everybody loves the dinosaurs, no doubt about it. You see those things, and people stop. I stop. One of the things I wanted to do when I went to Washington, I want to go to the Smithsonian. I wanted to see that big old T-Rex they got a picture of. Little did I know those aren't actual bones. Did you know that? Most of the time, those things you see put together are just that. They're plastic, like you'd buy a Chinese model or something. That's exactly what it is. All this is based and really came to focus a lot with a fellow by the name of Charles Darwin. And one of the things that ticks me off about the Darwin's book is, do you realize that Darwin would say that, and this is, folks, get you a copy, read it. It's not in there. I'm not making this up. This is not a preacher's story. Charles Darwin was the idea, and this idea had been around hundreds of years, the idea of evolution, but he really sold it, and people bought into it. But do you realize that he taught and thought that we see evolution going on today? Now hear me out. This is how he said it. That your white Anglo-Saxons, Caucasian people, are more evolutionary advanced than black people. Black people haven't got to where white people are yet. He said that. He taught that. Now, why don't you hear that when you're reading about Charles Darwin? It's in the same book. Because we realize that's just racist, and not only that, we just realize that's wrong. What are the oldest societies in the history of the world? The Egyptians, are they Anglo-Saxon Caucasians? Were the Africa, where you have so many societies that were advanced, along those lines? It's just wrong. He's wrong. And yet, that's not what they want to hear, so you don't hear that. But they'll quote Darwin, and they'll talk about his little birds, there being so many different kind of birds and things of this nature. They'll quote that, but the stuff they know would get them in trouble. The stuff they know that people would say, well, where did he come up with that? They realize that would undermine the whole purpose, so you don't hear that. They quoted this, and notice, as if it was inspired, and the theory behind it is being taught even today with your and mine tax dollars. And so the idea is that, we say that we look at a dinosaur and we say, you know what? That's God. Those bones, that's from God. That's creation. That's design. The evolutionist looks at those same bones and said, that's how we evolved and how we got here. Well, the Bible teaches, Psalms 104:24, O Lord, how manifold are thy works, and wisdom thou hast made them all. The earth is full of his riches. Isaiah 40:28. Hast thou not known, hast thou not heard, that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary, nor is no searching of his understanding. That's the difference. One would say there's no such thing. The other, we believe entirely that creation is of God. So let's get to this idea of the geologic time scale. Something that was brought to my attention a few weeks ago by my family, and I'm thankful for it. You can't see my pointer, okay? And so I'm up here, I'm just pointing away at stuff with this little pointer on my computer screen. You can't see it. If you were to go to the Mesozoic, that's the middle scale there. This is supposedly the geologic time scale, okay, going back to when supposedly everything crawled out of the, abyss 4 billion years ago or whatever. If you could look in the middle of that, you would see what's called the Jurassic area. That's the part that we're going to be interested in. So it'd be that middle table there in the green and that blue part right there. That's the Jurassic Park. You've seen the movie. That's the idea. That's the time frame that we're going to talk about. And one of the things I'd like to start out with, of course, is the dinosaurs. They were supposed to be here between 250 to 160 million years ago, somewhere along those lines. These folks just throw out numbers like everything. But one of the things Brother Bud and Lyons do in their book, they talk about historical evidence. Now, this is documentation. This is history. Now, you may not have a bone to prove it, but they're going to try to show some historical things between the idea of coexistence between humans and dinosaurs. Now, it had to take place because God created all things in 6 days. If they were here, they got created. Well, what happened to them? Well, I think that a lot of them probably were destroyed during the flood, but 2 of every kind were saved. Everybody says, well, how are you going to get a Tyrannosaurus Rex on the ark? Well, you could have brought an egg. Not only that, you could have brought a little bitty Tyrannosaurus Rex. It didn't have to be a full-grown one, but I think that's what probably killed them off. And I think one of the reasons, we can see that is the dinosaur graveyards. You have all these that wouldn't have lived in the same place. Well, anyway, let's start out with historical evidence. A dragon. Dragon comes from the word drakon in the Greek and draco in Latin, and it just means a large serpent. Do you realize every ancient culture that has a written history talks about dragons? That's very rare. As a matter of fact, even folks who don't believe in the Bible don't believe in God, but they'll all agree to the fact that every ancient culture has dragons as a part of its history. The ancient Greeks in mythology, remember a lady by the name of Medea. She was made famous by her marrying Jason, of Jason and the Argonaut fame. You ever seen that movie, Jason and the Argonauts? Jim Song, I bet you that's on one of your top 10s, isn't it? Jason and the Argonauts. Jason, you know when the first time I ever heard Jason and the Argonauts, I thought it was a band. I really did. But it was, in mythology, Jason had to go, search for the fleece, right? Well, this lady was supposed to help him out, but we're talking now in ancient culture, 3,000 years old at least, ancient Greeks. Notice who's carrying her chariot. You have those dragons. Herodotus, who's called the father of history, 450 BC, he wrote of dragons and talked about going to an island where he saw some much smaller ones, if you will. But he wrote about dragons. Josephus wrote about dragons. Now, the dragons they were talking about were much smaller. But notice the writings that we have, the Celts, the Vikings. What was the symbol of Vikings? You remember? What do you see on all their ships? They have a big dragon on it, right? I mean, it was very popular. And here you have 4 different types of dragons as brought out by the different stories that were told by people. Now, people generally tell stories because of events in their lives and things of that nature. Now, yes, they may enhance them and they may elaborate on them. But still, the fact that everybody has these in their heritage and talks about them, as a matter of fact, this is the national, the Wales flag in England, Wales of England. This is their national flag. And then it only doesn't stop in Europe. It's not just something that you read about with the Germans or the Vikings or even in England. You see this in Asian art. How many times have you been to go to a Chinese restaurant and look at the walls? What do you find written all over them? One of the most cultures, most ancient that we have, you'll see dragons. I mean, if you go to one of the parades, they have a dragon. It's something that you see. And I wasn't aware of this, but this here is a scaled animal that has a forked tongue with horns on its head. This is from the Ishtar Gate in ancient Babylon, one of their gods called Surush. So there's all this evidence, and they go into 2 whole chapters just on evidence, and even in quoting these professors and stuff that don't care beans about God or the Bible, but are amazed that all these cultures talk about these animals, and they believe they must have based them on something. And so, these 2 brethren, they write about, the fact that all these cultures talk about these fire-breathing dragons as well. Well, there's animals nowadays that'll spit stuff on you that can, hurt you, acidic, if you will. Even talking about this one little bug, that'll spray this stuff on you and can paralyze you. It's pretty amazing stuff I didn't realize. But now let's go into, I think, what's a little bit more interesting, and we'll stop here in a few minutes. Don't get too discouraged. The physical evidence. We want to show me the evidence, if you will, right? And remember, we're talking about the Jurassic period in the middle of that center column there. And remember, the earth is full of layers, and if you want to see layers, just go to the Grand Canyon. And one of the things that's really interesting about the Grand Canyon is that Wayne Jackson brings us out in an excellent little pamphlet he's got talking about the day and the geological timetable and it just being wrong. The Grand Canyon, I mean, you won't find any place that has more strata. I mean, you got a mile of it to look at. But do you realize the top 4 layers are wrong according to the geographic timetable, the dirt, timetable? Well, how is that possible? Well, it's wrong. But do they care about right and wrong? No. According to the Grand Canyon, what they say is right. Well, let's move on. This is in Cambodia. Now, this is from 1998. When I first started doing this sermon, working on this sermon, it was 1993, one of the first sermons I put together on this, because this was really important to me, especially, man, when I found out this material, I was like, I wished I'd get anything when I was a kid to have access to this, because I'm going to tell you, man, it hurts. It's on your faith when you got a teacher sitting there telling you, that Bible stuff. We know for sure this is 100 million years old. Well, how do you know? They don't have a clue. The tests they use don't work. Even the tests of guys that made up the tests say these aren't effective past 10,000 years, and yet they keep using them. And even though there's all this evidence out there that I had no idea existed, well, let's look at this. We're in ancient Cambodia now. This stuff, and what happened, I think it's been in the last century or two, they decided, look, we've got to protect these places, and so you're just not allowed to go in there. And so they did that, and of course, they're protected, they're overgrown and things now. but not too many people went in there and studied them. Have you ever heard of the Khmer Rouge and all that? They've had a lot of civil war and a lot of trouble, and so a lot of scientists didn't want to go in there for a long time. But now that is opened up, and what I wanted to show you here, this is on a wall. And now if you can look back here, you can see these structures and how old they are. They've had people come in to verify that there's no way you could have removed this particular column that we're going to be looking at. There's so many thousand pounds sitting on top of it. It would have taken tools and things you would actually see where it would have had to have been pulled out to put back in there because it's that important. And why is it that important? Well, on this column, you'll see many animals displayed here, but what's of particular interest is this one particular animal. That is, and if you, a lot of people try to say, well, that's just an aardvark or that's a rhino or something, but even grade school kids, they could tell you that that's a stegosaurus. That is a stegosaurus, and of course, they had people come out and verify that. And there's many pictures of it. So if you just look at Cambodia, the Stegosaurus of Cambodia, and Google that, you're going to get buku pictures of that. And another evidence they show. Now I didn't have access to this. This is something that's in the last 20 years, and I was real appreciative for the book. It was worth the price of the book for me, just to see this. And also another thing that I'd never heard of. This is Richard Bell's tomb from Carlisle, England. He died in 1495 AD. And boy, if you ever go into any of those shrines or Catholic cathedrals over there, hundreds of years old, they really take care of the dead. They have some very ornate things. Well, anyway, if you can look on here, this bottom, the animal, there's the gold plate on the bottom there. I don't know how well that showed up. Yeah, this gold plate right here, if you look all the way over, you'll see an animal, and right here, it has these pores that come off. I'm sorry you can't see it any better than that. And to be honest with you, the image is not that good because they had a rug over it, but they have been walking on this thing for 600 years. So it has a tendency, to rub some stuff off. But that is believed to be the tail, like you see right here on this of a dinosaur. And then the long creature you see is believed to be a replica or a drawing of this what's called a diplodocus, I guess is how you'd say that. And the reason that that's interesting was they didn't have no fossil. They weren't looking at fossils 600 years ago. How did they draw that? And one of the conclusions they're drawing is those Cambodians that drawed that on there 3,000 years ago saw those animals. And they drawed them pretty close to scale. Same thing here. You have 600 years ago, people are writing this art out, putting it on this tomb in between each one of these Latin words that go up the side of this tomb. They're drawing different animals. You've got, and we know it's not an alligator. Why? Because they drawed an alligator on there. 3 different dogs on here as well. There's all these animals all the way across this gold thing that goes across this guy's head. And you have these 2 creatures. Well, they didn't have, paleontologists and archaeologists and all that going on then. Where'd they do that? Somebody had seen one of those things. Somebody had written about it. This is from a drawing in the Grand Canyon, and it just so happens they have that same drawing in here, and they did a whole lot better job than I did. I should have done that. But they show you the dinosaur that this actually represents because it used to set on its tail. It had a real thick tail, and of course it's a very tall creature. This is from our Grand Canyon here in the United States. Now this is from Natural Bridges National Monument in Utah, and of course you can see the original picture up there to the left, and this is believed to have been drawn by a group of people called the Anasazi Indians. It's believed to be between 1,500 years and 500 years old, 5 to 1,500 years old. And a lot of people say, oh, it's just a goofy looking horse, guy couldn't draw too good. Well, they didn't have horses. Remember, the horse will not be introduced to the North America before the 17th century by the Spanish. It wasn't a horse. So what was it a picture of? Well, it just so happens about 50 miles down the road, you have the Dinosaur Museum in a place called Blanding, Utah. And it just so happens that they have found there a Apatosaurus, hip fossil. And there, of course, is a picture of Eric Lyons standing there in front of it, 45 miles away from where this drawing is. Do you think that that is just coincidence? I don't believe it is. You got people that were drawing pictures. What does that mean? That men were contemporary with dinosaurs, that men saw dinosaurs. It's the only explanation. Where would these have come from? Did you have Anasazi national preservation of fossil records that would go out and study these bones and so forth? Absolutely not. Folks saw these type things, and I promise you we'd stop at 15 till, and I am 3 minutes past my promise, so I am going to stop here. But I wanted you to see this material. We will finish this up next week because there are many more things to show that there's fossil evidence and by that I mean footprint. Actually, it's not a fossil. It'd be more like indentations, footprints and so forth, showing that human beings and dinosaurs were contemporary. Well, a lot of people say, how come you don't have human beings fossilized in these dinosaur pits? Well, let's just, we'll close with this. Let's just say, here you are, and the flood comes. What are most human beings going to do? Most human beings. I know you'd have those guys out there with their wakeboards and surfboards, trying to catch the big wave. But most people are going to try to go to high ground, right? Most animals, they're going to do what instinct tells them. They're going to run. They're going to go. Well, you find all these animals. Remember, carnivores with omnivores. Omnivores eat plants. Carnivores eat omnivores. You find them all together. They wouldn't have been hanging out together and having coffee, okay? They were trying to get away from something. You find them all together in these mass pools of, and I believe it's just where the flood, where their bodies just ended up. And, of course, we've got some good material on that, too, in the church library on some of the things that happened at Mount St. Helens and some of the ways that the animals were done and stuff. And but for the most part, it's only in that type of cataclysmic event where you even get fossils. What happens to most things? Most things die, and they simply what? They rot. They just absolutely rot. We just deteriorate, biological process. And so why are there not human fossils? Well, there's a lot of things we could go on. Why are there not more fossils in the fossil record and so forth? And we'll address some of those things. But one of the reasons I want to go over this, just simply because I want young people to understand that, there is more to this. There is more than, you don't have to just think that we're guessing, that, there's a God in heaven and He loves you and He wants you to be saved. And there's going to be a lot of men who are going to try everything in the world out there to tell you something different because they're going to want to live their lives like they want to live them. They don't want to be righteous. They don't care about morals don't mean anything to them. That's just something, and they're going to try to get you away from that, young folks. Philosophies of men, it's been going on since the garden. It's going to continue to go on. And what we're trying to do here is just simply give you some information to say, hey, listen, there's explanations for this. Some of the things they're saying, there's a reason that this is done. We can see from evidence, and to prove all things, 1 Thessalonians 5:21, this is just not a guessing game. The evidence is out there, and I'm thankful for these guys. If you're here tonight, you're not a New Testament Christian. We haven't talked a whole lot about Christianity and God and the blood of Jesus tonight. What we've been looking at is some foundational issues of creation and how that men are created in the image of God, and God holds us accountable. He holds us responsible. He is not going to have dinosaurs standing before Him on the day of judgment, nor dogs or pigs or cats or anything else. They're not accountable for their actions. They live by instinct. Human beings, you're not instinctive. The things that you have moral principles. You know that some things are right. You know that some things are wrong. And that's because there is a form of righteousness. There is a God in heaven. Men know that. The Bible even talks about men decided they were going to be done away with God, changed the image of God into four-footed beasts, created idols, things of this nature, and just simply forgot God, put Him out of their mind. If you're here tonight, you're not a New Testament Christian, don't you buy into that. You're created in the image of God. He loves you. He wants you to be saved. Sent His Son to die upon the cross for our sins. If not a Christian, you need to be thinking about becoming one. Maybe in times past you've left your first love. Look at the things that God has done for us. Let's be what we ought to be. Let's be the kind of people God would have us to be. If we can help you in any way, we encourage you to come as together we stand and